have you ever really thought about the difference between knowing how something moves versus understanding why it moves? I mean, it sounds simple, right? But that one little question, that's a huge deal. It marks one of the biggest shifts in the entire history of science. And today, we're going to dig right into that shift, the birth of what we call classical mechanics.
I mean, motion is literally everywhere, and sometimes it's just breathtaking. Take a look at this dolphin. We can totally describe how it's moving, right? We can measure its speed, figure out the arc of its jump, calculate its acceleration, all that stuff. But the real question, the much deeper question, is why? What are the actual forces at play that are making this incredible leap possible? That's the mystery we're going to start to unravel today.
So this whole how versus why thing is so important that physics actually has two different words for it. You see, describing the how, that's called kinematics. That's all the stuff like velocity, acceleration, the path something takes. But explaining the why, well, that's dynamics. And that's where we get into the good stuff, the forces, the causes behind it all. And dynamics, that's where Isaac Newton completely changed the game. That's really going to be our focus.
But here's the thing. Before we could even get to the why, science itself had to have a total makeover. For centuries, what we think of as science was really natural philosophy, and it was pretty much dominated by ancient thinkers like Aristotle. Now, their method wasn't about running experiments. Nope. It was all about making pure logical arguments. And a new wave of thinkers started to say, hey, wait a minute. To understand the world, you can't just sit around and think about it. You've actually got to go out and look at it.
And that idea, right there, that was the revolution. The guy who really championed this was Galileo Galilei. He's the one who argued that you can't just figure out the universe from your armchair. You have to go out and observe it. Observation, he said, is the ultimate judge of what is actually true. I know, it sounds so simple to us now, but back then, whoa, it was absolutely world-changing.
And listen, Galileo didn't just talk the talk. He walked the walk. He got his hands on one of those newfangled inventions, the telescope, and he pointed it at the sky. What did he see? Moons orbiting Jupiter. Now that might not sound like a big deal, but it directly challenged the ancient idea that everything in the universe revolved around the Earth. And this wasn't some friendly academic debate either. His commitment to what he saw came at a massive personal cost. His ideas were so radical that he was actually put on trial and forced to spend the rest of his life under house arrest. But, you know what? The cat was already out of the bag. His observations were eventually verified, and it set science on a completely new path, forever.
So you can think of it like this. Galileo laid the foundation. He established how we should do science, by observing. And the next absolute giant of this era, Isaac Newton, well, he took that foundation and built a magnificent skyscraper right on top of it. He's the one who would give us the universal rules that finally explained the why.
So in 1687, Newton publishes what you could easily argue is one of the most important scientific books ever written. It's called the Principia Mathematica. And this thing wasn't just a collection of cool observations. No. It was a complete mathematical system for describing the motion of the entire universe. It laid the very groundwork for what we call dynamics.
So what exactly did Newton do in this book? Honestly, it's almost hard to wrap your head around. First off, he laid out his three fundamental laws of motion. Then, he came up with the universal law of gravitation, a single elegant rule that could explain both why an apple falls from a tree and why planets orbit the sun. And, to top it all off, get this. The math needed to describe all these incredible ideas didn't even exist yet. So, he just invented it. He created calculus, a whole new branch of mathematics, basically so he could write down the rules of the universe. Just incredible.
Okay, wow. That was a lot to take in, I know. Before we push forward, let's just take a quick pause and do a little check-in to make sure one of the really key ideas is stuck with you.
All right, so who was that crucial figure who really pushed the idea that seeing is believing, and in doing so, basically paved the way for Newton? Was it A, Aristotle, B, Galileo, or C, Einstein? Take a second to think it over.
And the answer is B, Galileo. He's the one who insisted that observation, not just dusty old arguments, was the final word on what was true. And that massive shift in thinking created the perfect launchpad for someone like Newton to come along and build his incredible theories. All right, so what happens next?
Okay, so Newton's laws are just astonishingly powerful. Seriously, they can predict the motion of a baseball, a car, even a planet with almost perfect accuracy. But as our tools got better and our ability to observe the universe grew, we started to see some weird stuff. We found places where the rules seemed to bend a little, and in some cases where they broke down completely.
And this realm, this domain, where Newton's laws work so incredibly well, that's what we now call classical mechanics. And it's really important to remember that word. It's an incredibly good approximation of reality for the world we live in every day. But it's not the whole story.
So where are these boundaries? Where do the rules change? Well, classical mechanics is perfect for things that are bigger than a molecule and moving at speeds way, way slower than the speed of light. But the moment you dive into the tiny, tiny world of atoms, we call that the quantum realm, or when you start accelerating up towards the cosmic speed limit, the speed of light, the relativistic realm, well, that's when Newton's beautiful, elegant laws just start to fall apart.
So a good way to think about it is like this. Physics kind of has two major branches. On one hand, you've got classical physics. That's Newton's turf. It masterfully explains our everyday world, from planets to baseballs. And on the other hand, you've got modern physics. This is where pioneers like Albert Einstein come in. This branch gives us the rules for the universe at its most extreme, the unbelievably fast and the ridiculously small.
So what exactly are these new rules that take over in those realms beyond our normal experience? Well, this is where we get into the physics of the 20th and 21st centuries.
It really comes down to two great pillars of modern physics. First, you have Einstein's theory of relativity. It completely rewrote our understanding of gravity, space, and time, and it's what you need to describe motion at incredibly high speeds. And then you have quantum theory. This was developed by a whole group of brilliant minds, and it gives us the bizarre yet wonderful rules for the world of atoms and subatomic particles.
And that kind of brings us full circle, doesn't it? We went from just describing how things move to explaining why thanks to Galileo and Newton. Then we found the limits of their why, which pushed us to discover relativity in quantum mechanics. And all of this leaves us with one final, really fascinating question. What are the limits of what we understand right now? What other, even deeper rules of the universe are still out there, just waiting for us to find them?